I'll try, ma. If at all I get this permission, I mean, I'm trying to record it. Okay, I think it's recording. I'll try to post the video. Right. So if you take this plano convex lens and plane glass plate setup, it is going to have an air gap in the middle. So that air gap is responsible for interference happening. And for simplicity, we are considering only one particular ray as incident ray. Don't get confused. This is not the only ray and this is not the only orientation. Light rays can fall in any arbitrary direction on this lens anyway, right? But I am considering a general light ray in this direction. And I am taking a light ray under normal incidence. Normal incidence is because when you keep this plano-convex lens, obviously light rays will be falling perpendicular if you put a lamp on the top, or at least we'll try to make it like that. So I'm interested in a specific normal incidence case. That's why my light ray is straight and perpendicular to the surface of the lens. When this light ray of wavelength lambda, when this light ray of wavelength lambda hits the lens, obviously some part of the light will be reflected even at the top of the lens, which I have not shown here. Definitely here at this point also light will be reflected, which I am not interested. So the light ray will be transmitted also into the lens, and at point B shown over here, it suffers a reflection as well as refraction. I repeat, at point B, the incident parent light ray is going to suffer a reflection as the brownish light ray, ray 1, and it is going to get transmitted as the ray shown like BC towards point C. So refraction and reflection. Now, from B, as the light ray has entered the air film, it is going to hit the point C by traveling through air. Please try to understand. B and C are the 2 points which are actually the interface points, the boundary points of air and glass surfaces. Right? We are interested in only these 2 points, Amma. So both B and C will be acting like a coherent source setup, a pair of coherent sources, B and C. As we already know about the ray traveling from B towards D as ray 1, let's consider the other ray also. So at point C also there will be transmission downwards, which I have not shown as I am not interested, because our syllabus only deals with reflection geometry. Reflection geometry means we will be considering only the reflected rays, but not the transmitted rays. You can refer to the syllabus. Okay, so from point C also there will be reflected rays as ray 2. Immediately one may, sorry, immediately one may question that for normal incidents, why the light rays are inclined. These are not the orientations of the reflected rays. Generally, it won't happen, Amma. We are intentionally drawing the diagram wrongly. Why? Because the incident ray, if it falls like this, the reflected ray will also go in the same direction because it is normal incidence. You cannot expect the light ray to travel this way. But for clarity, for understanding sake, we are intentionally drawing the rays with little bit inclined. Don't think that the rays are going this way. For normal incidence, they will go back in the same direction, not this way. Okay. So these two rays, ray 1 and ray 2, are generated from the same single parent ray, and they are having constant path difference or phase difference, whatever you say, because the gap between B and C is not going to vary with time. No matter whether you measure it right now or after a few seconds, unless you disturb the lens, the distance is not going to vary, right? So path difference is going to remain constant, phase difference is going to remain constant, and both rays are having same wavelength, and hence they will be coherent sources. So these two coherent sources are going to interfere in the field of view of the observer or microscope. What about intensity? Somebody is asking. See, the light rays B and C, I mean the points B and C are pretty close to each other, pretty close. Why? Because I said the lens is having large radius of curvature. Large radius of curvature means it's almost flat, it's almost flat. You won't see this much curvature. It's an exaggeration. Almost it's looking like a plain glass plate with a large radius of curvature, right? Definitely the gap between B and C is very small, and hence the intensities of B and C point rays, I mean ray 1 and ray 2, will be comparable. Will be comparable. Just a rough approximation I'm saying, generally transparent glass or transparent means something which transmits more and reflects less. I repeat, transparent means mostly it will be transmitted and very less portion will be reflected, right? So from the top part of the lens, the reflected ray intensity will be very small compared to these two because it's transparent. Let's say worst case 90% transmission. 90% transmission means, assuming ideal, if 100 units of light falls here, only 10% will be reflected back and remaining 90% will be transmitted, right? So imagine that the light ray is coming up to here at point B, it is being reflected. Assume that out of 100 units, only 10 units have come here, right? This is 10 units. Ray 1's intensity is 10 units, and the B is being further split into component. So 90% is coming down. Na? So 90 units of light is received at CMR. 90 units of light at C. Out of 90 units, 90% of 90, 90% of 90 means 81 units. Zero point 0.9 into 90, if you multiply it, you are going to get 81. So 81 units of light will go down. 81 units coming down, and the balance 90 minus 81 is 9 units. So that 9 units will be this blue ray, right? So ray 2 is having 9 units and ray 1 is having 10 units. I already mentioned that for having for sustained interference, one need to have comparable amplitudes or comparable intensities. So you cannot expect interference to happen with 1 unit and 100 units. 1 and 100 cannot interfere properly. If the amplitudes are comparable, then only you can see the interference pattern, sustained interference pattern. It is a desirable condition. So are they not ray 1 and ray 2 qualifying for this comparable intensity? Because in this example itself, I showed that one is 10 units, another one is 9 units. So with the 10 and 9, is it not possible? Lahari, are you with me? Okay, she is not responding. I thought she will get this value. Okay, anyway. So ray 1 and ray 2 are having comparable intensity somehow, and hence they are in a state to interfere. These are coherent sources. Please understand this setup. I'll make a move to the next slide. So our interest here is actually to calculate the path difference created between the two rays. In earlier case with the thin film interference also, we have calculated the path difference for a parallel thin film. Parallel thin film. Parallel means, if you recall the thin film interference where we have derived the cosine law, 2 mu t cos r, we assume the t constant because it's a parallel film. If you can go back, let me switch the previous one somewhere so that I can show you what is there. Please look at this picture. Here we have assumed that PQ and P dash Q dash are the surfaces of the thin film. So here the path difference between the two is T, which is constant. I mean, sorry, the thickness of the film is T, which is a constant. It is not going to vary from point to point. So it is a uniform parallel thin film. Whereas now, in the case of Newton's rings, let me switch to that. See this. Here the film is not uniform. You can see the film is curved. Actually, you have a plano-concave shaped thin film, and hence the thickness is going to vary from point to point. So sometimes in the question they may ask you, discuss the interference pattern formed with the non-parallel thin film. Non-parallel. So this comes under the non-parallel case. So Newton's rings is one case where the thin film is not uniform, right? Okay. So let us suppose that at a specific point where we have denoted as B and C, let the thickness of the film, be some t, small t. Okay. Remember, this t is not constant. From point to point, as you move this way, the thickness is going to vary. And at this point, the point where the lens and glass plate will touch each other, it is going to have zero thickness, right? So this is zero thickness and the thickness will be continuously increasing. Fine. So at that particular point, the path difference created between the two rays was just 2 mu t cos r. This is the geometric path difference, plus or minus lambda by 2, I have added, because if you pay attention here, the ray from B is coming from a relatively rarer boundary, relatively rarer. See here, this is air and this is glass. So the light ray is coming from glass, going back to glass, at air interface. So this is 1 and this is 1.5. So from 1.5 to 1, if the light ray incidence, from 1.5 refractive index to 1 refractive index, if the light ray incidence, the reflection will not have any phase change. The reflection will not have any phase change according to Stokes' law on change of phase. So ray from B will not have any extra phase, whereas the ray from C, please observe, the ray which is coming from C because of reflection, the BC path is air. So here it is refractive index 1 mm. From 1, it is hitting a glass plate which is 1.5, right? So 1 to 1.5 means the refractive index is increasing. So if the reflection is taking place at a relatively denser boundary, whereas at B it was rarer boundary, at C it is denser boundary. So from C the reflected ray will suffer, that is the ray 2 will suffer an extra phase of pi or equivalent path of lambda by 2. So geometric path is 2 mu t cos r and the extra phase created path is lambda by 2. You can take plus or minus, it's arbitrary, right? So I have explained it here. The ray 2 suffers extra phase of pi by 2 at C. Clear? So here we are having path difference both in terms of geometric and optical. Fine. I'll make you move to the next slide. So path difference is now known. Now we'll try to apply special cases. As I mentioned that the light ray will fall perpendicularly on the surface of the lens, that is normal incidence. So under normal incidence, you know, in the previous case also I have mentioned, for normal incidence, angle of incidence is 0, I 0. Obviously R, small r will be 0. So please remember the condition. For normal incidence, the angle of refraction is always 0. So for normal incidence, I'm putting R equal to 0. And if you take the medium, the thin film as air, in that case, mu will be equal to 1. Because you should not get confused as we are using glass lens and glass plate. Glass is the medium. No, glass is not at all the medium, Amma. Here the thin film is air. Air is the thin film, but not the glass. Okay. So the air's refractive index is 1. And hence, if you substitute R equal to 0 and mu equal to 1, cos 0 becomes 1 and mu becomes 1. So it is just a 2t plus or minus lambda by 2. So that is the final expression. But here is another problem. We don't know what is the t. T is a variable. And the two t is minuscule. It is extremely small, infinitesimal, that it is not possible to measure with any available instrument. It is very difficult in the laboratory. So somehow we have to express this t in terms of other measurable parameters, right? That part we are going to do in the next slide. Before that, as we know that the path difference is this between the two rays, now we can go further to calculate maximas and minimas. See, after you calculate the net path difference, that is the optical path difference, you can equate it to n lambda for having a maxima or bright fringe, and you can equate it to odd multiples of half lambda to have a dark fringe, right? So bright fringe and dark fringe conditions are now given here, Amma. For constructive or bright, you have this 2t minus lambda by 2 is equal to n lambda. And here I took negative. You can take positive also. It's up to you. And here also for destructive case, I took 2t minus lambda by 2 only. And I have equated it to 2n minus 1 lambda by 2. And a word of caution. Without explaining you, I have used a word ring here. Please notice. Bright ring, dark ring. So far I have not explained why you get ring. The title is Newton's rings. The fringes may be even straight lines also, because in Young's double slit experiment you might have seen the straight edge fringes. Here I have not yet proved that they are rings. Of course, I am going to prove them in a minute. Let me move to the next slide. Any questions so far? Anything not clear to you? Okay. So I'm going to calculate the TMR, and I'll also prove that the shape of the interference fringes is going to be a circle or a ring. For that, I told about radius of curvature in the beginning of the class. What is meant by radius of curvature? See, I am showing you a dotted circle here. This dotted circle is actually not a real circle, not a real sphere, but it is actually a part of smaller one. You can see here, Amma. Please excuse me, just a minute. I'm sorry for the interruption, Amma. Sorry. So here, this dotted circle is actually not a physical circle, Amma. Why minus lambda by 2? Amma, lambda by 2, you can take plus lambda by 2 or minus lambda by 2 because phase difference of pi is equivalent to path difference of lambda by 2. As I mentioned, lambda difference, you can take positive or negative. Ultimately, it is going to be different by lambda by 2. For mathematical convenience, in some cases we take plus lambda by 2, in some cases we take minus lambda by 2. Ultimately, the m or n value will be different. If I say m equal to 0 and 2m plus 1, or if you say m equal to 1 and 2m minus 1, they are actually representing the same. My m starts with 0 and your m starts with 1, right? Ultimately, the right hand side is going to be the same. The starting value of right hand side is going to be the same. So please don't bother about these numbers. As you, I mean, if you try to do some problems based on this, you will be able to understand that no matter whether we take plus lambda by 2 or minus lambda by 2, the conditions for maxima or minima are not going to be different, right? Okay. So let's come back to this circle. So this circle is actually a part of, this circle is actually a hypothetical sphere, a hypothetical sphere. Please try to understand this line. I mean, this plano-convex lens. Can you notice a plano-convex lens here? The cross section of a plano-convex lens with point at center. With its point of contact at O. Only this portion is the plano-convex lens. This dotted circle is just an imaginary circle, right? I told you about radius of curvature. What is meant by radius of curvature for a lens? See, lens will be this way. I mean, if you see from the top, this is going to be a circle from the top, whereas it is actually a part of a huge sphere. Simplest example, you take a spherical watermelon, a watermelon in spherical shape. Now, instead of cutting it at the center, you slice it from the sideways. So don't take a complete, don't take it at the center. You try to slice a piece from the side. You are going to get some kind of plano-convex lens, right? So that plano-convex lens is our lens here. I hope you can understand this. So whatever is the radius of the watermelon, that will be the radius of curvature for the given plano-convex lens. So here, this plano-convex lens can be imagined. It can be imagined as a part of huge glass sphere whose radius is this capital R, right? So this capital R is representing the radius of curvature for this given plano-convex lens. And don't get confused, lens is in circular shape. Many people confuse with the radius of the circle as radius of curvature. Radius of the lens is not the radius of curvature. Please remember, radius of curvature of the lens is the radius of the imaginary sphere from where the lens is imagined to be cut out, right? Okay, if you know this capital R, then we can proceed further. So actually the diagram got flipped. Earlier I have shown this T on the left hand side this way. The light ray was falling this way, but here for convenience I have changed. You can draw it other side also. Okay, so here if you take the lens at a particular point where the thickness is T, notation is slightly different. Here I'm using Q and P. I'll be following this only. So 2 points from where the light rays, earlier I have shown it as B and C. So those 2 points are generating 2 light rays, and there the path difference is just 2 mu T cos R, that is the thickness T. As I said, T is very difficult to measure. I'll be introducing a parameter called Rn, right? This Rn is the radius of the ring. Of course, I am going to prove that there will be rings also. Okay, fine. Now, if you look at this geometry, at C, we have the center for this imaginary sphere, Amma. This imaginary sphere from where the lens has been cut out, it is going to have a center C. So from C, the distance of this is going to be R, and same thing from C, the distance of O is also R, because every point on the circumference will be equidistant from the center of the sphere, right? So CQ as well as CO are both capital R only, where R is the radius of curvature of the lens. Okay. Now, if T is this thickness, as QP is equivalent to HO, can you understand this? HO is equivalent to QP. It's a rectangle, regular rectangle, right? So you can take this HO also as a T, and you can actually take the rest of this, that is from C to H. From C to H, you can call the distance as R minus T. The picture is somewhat confusing. Please don't get confused. My intention is CH value is R minus T, not this HO. Don't get confused, because HO is after all T. So the balance is actually R minus T, right? You can apply the Pythagoras theorem to this right angle triangle CQH. CQH is a right angle triangle. There you can apply the Pythagoras theorem, which says that R square is equal to R minus T whole square plus small rn square, which I'll show in the next slide. I hope you can see this. So I'm going to calculate this sum. This is R minus T whole square, and this HQ is nothing but Rn square is equal to R square. This is the Pythagoras theorem. If you expand this, it is going to be R square, of course, A minus B whole square formula, R square plus T square minus 2RT. R square plus T square minus 2RT. Here I have removed this R square. Why? Because on the right hand side I have another R square. This and that will get cancelled. So what am I left with here is minus 2RT plus T square plus Rn square is equal to 0. Right? Here you have to remember one thing. I said T is pretty small. T is a fraction of millimeter. Right? Sometimes millimeter or a fraction of millimeter. If you take any quantity which is less than 1, and if you square it, you will not get a big number. Let me give you an example. If I give you 2, and if I ask you to square it, 2 squares are 4, 3 squares are 9. Definitely the square will be greater. Whereas for smaller quantities less than 1, if you take the square, it is going to be much smaller. Right? If you take 1 by 2, 1 by 2 means half, 50%. And take 1 by 2 square, which is 1 by 4. 1 by 4 means 25%. So for less than 1 quantities, the square will be much smaller than the original quantity. So here T itself is pretty small. Obviously T square will be much smaller. So you can simply neglect it when compared with this capital R. Usually capital R is very large, large radius of curvature. I have already mentioned it earlier. So R is very large. So T square is very small. You can drop it, right? Then what you can do is just Rn square is equal to 2RT, or this small t, you can see here, Rn square is equal to 2RT. I said approximately equal, almost very close because it's a negligible quantity. Or you can write this T as Rn square divided by 2R. Rn square divided by 2R. Now I have to prove why there should be rings. See, the shape of the interference fringe. The shape of the interference fringe is governed by the path difference. I repeat, the shape of the interference fringe is governed by path difference. As we have already calculated the path difference in the previous slide, this is the path difference, 2t plus or minus lambda by 2, right? So for a given setup, if you are using a specific light, lambda is constant, only t is the variable, right? So depending on the t, you will get whether a maxima or a minima, right? So the maximas and minimas are solely depending on t equal to constant locus. I repeat, t equal to t equal to constant locus is going to give you a maxima or minima. That is going to decide the shape of the fringe. Okay, what is t equal to constant locus? Please try to understand. What is t equal to constant locus? Let me go back to the previous picture. See here, I'm unable to show. Please follow me on my video, ma. I have this mask. For the time being, you please imagine this as a lens, a plano convex lens. Of course, it's not so. Assume that my mobile is something like a plain glass plate and you mount it like this, right? So here you have a plano concave shaped air gap in between the mask and this one. Now, if I ask you what is the shape of thickness 1 centimeter locus, thickness 1 centimeter locus, as I said, here there is an air gap between this mask and the plane, I mean the mobile. There is a gap now. I don't know whether you're, just a minute, I hope you can see this gap, right? If I ask you what is the locus of 1 centimeter gap, assuming that this is a lens, of course it's not a lens, but try to understand. Or the other example is you take a spherical bowl. మీ ఇంట్లో ఏదైనా spherical bowl ఉంటే you put it on the table, right? It is going to have a plano concave shape. If I ask you what is the locus of 1 centimeter constant, 1 centimeter constant thickness. So if you just take 1 centimeter I mean the gap between the lens and the plain glass plate must remain 1 centimeter. If you take that, it is going to trace out a circle. Please try to understand. T equal to constant locus is going to be a circle. That's why we are going to get the interference fringes as circles or rings. I have already used the word ring earlier without justifying it. But the reason is, as T equal to constant is the shape of the fringe, T equal to constant for this case will be a circle. That's why we get Newton's rings here, not Newton's rings and Newton's lines. Okay. Whereas in Young's double slit experiment, you get straight lines, which you might have studied in intermediate. Here we are going to start with Newton's rings only. Okay. Let's make a move to the next slide. So here, as I have justified that there are going to be rings, I can take this Rn as the radius of that particular ring. You can see here, this is Rn. When your eye is on the top of this, when you are observing from the top, this Rn is simply the radius of that particular ring. I repeat, this Rn is going to be the radius of that particular ring observed by the observer. Of course, these rings are going to be very small. Without a magnifying lens, you cannot see. Without a compound microscope, you cannot see them. But for mathematical calculation sake, this you assume that observer is directly looking at it. Okay, so this is small Rn. Then, as you know, radius and diameter are related with R is equal to d by 2. R is equal to d by 2, where d is the diameter. I have replaced this Rn with dn by 2, where dn is going to be the diameter of the corresponding ring. Earlier Rn is radius, now dn is diameter of the ring. So dn by 2 whole square divided by 2r, or if you square this denominator, it is going to be 4 So dn square divided by 4 into 2, which is 8. So dn square by 8r is the t. Now listen, you cannot measure the t so easily, whereas you can measure this r. If you had ever gone to your optics lab in intermediate, you might have measured the focal length of various lenses in the optics lab experiments. If you had ever gone to, I don't know, I really doubt it, right? If you have done the experiment, definitely you know how to measure this R. So for any given lens, R is a measurable quantity. And coming to dn, dn is not as small as this t. Dn is relatively larger compared to this t. T is very small. So it is better to measure this dn rather than measuring this t. So our problem has further reduced to solving of dn. If you can measure this dn, your job is done. Fine. Now I'll make a move to the next slide. So as I already mentioned that the path difference is decided by the path difference decides the shape of the fringes. So constant locus, that is a t equal to constant locus, is going to be a circle. That's why we get rings. And we get maxima as a bright ring and minima as a dark ring. Bright and dark concentric rings. That is going to be the shape of the fringes. So in the exam, short answer question, they may ask, what is the nature of fringes in Newton's rings experiment? What is the nature of fringes in Newton's rings experiment? Of course, they are circles. Why? Because path difference is this, and the locus of constant path difference. Locus of constant path difference is going to be a circle. That's why we get bright ring, dark ring. Okay, I'll make a move to the next slide. So as usual, we have calculated the path difference now. Now we know the t in terms of dn by r. That is, t can be safely replaced as dn square by 8r. We can calculate the bright ring and dark ring condition. As you know, path difference is equal to n lambda gives you bright. Path difference equal to 2n minus 1 lambda by 2 gives you dark. So I am starting with bright rings. As one of your friend asked me, why are you taking minus lambda by 2? If you dislike, you try this, take it as an exercise, take plus lambda by 2 and get another expression. Both of them will be the same, right? So I am taking minus lambda by 2, and those who have asked, please try with plus lambda by 2. You will end up with the same answer. Okay, so in place of t, I am putting dn square by 8 r, 2, 8, it will become 4. So dn square by 4r, and this minus lambda by 2, when it is gone to the, when it is pushed to the other side, it becomes 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. On the other side, it is 2n plus 1 into lambda by 2, and here it is 4. So 2 is there. So ultimately, you are left with a 2 on the denominator. So it is dn square by 2r. dn square by 2r is equal to 2n plus 1 lambda, or dn square is equal to this. If you want the diameter of bright ring, just take its square root. So square root will be just dn is equal to square root of 2 lambda r into 2n plus 1. So this is going to be the expression for bright ring, the diameter of bright ring with Newton's rings. So in the exam, short answer question may appear, derive an expression for the bright ring's diameter, or derive the expression for the dark ring's diameter. It's a short answer question. Then you may assume this path difference and just get this expression, right? And here my n is going to start with 0. It is n equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Some girls ask me the question, what happens if I take plus lambda by 2? Then in that case, your expression will be 2n minus 1, 2n minus 1. Then you cannot use this 0, because if you put n equal to 0, this expression becomes negative. So square root of negative number, it is complex, which is not real. But remember, diameters are real. If I just ask you what is your age, you should not reply 17i. I is an imaginary number, na? 17 years is okay. 17 I years is meaningless. Just like the diameter is also real. How it could be dn square is equal to 2 into 2n plus 1 lambda r? Amma, what is the problem? Just try to solve this equation. Na? It is 2 and 8r, na? It is 4r, right? It is 4r, and on the other side, this lambda will come as 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. So here it is 2 in the denominator. On the left hand side, it is 4. So 2 and 4, if you cancel, you are left with only 2. Na? That's what I have written as 2 into 2n plus 1 lambda r. Somebody said cross multiplication. Of course, it's a trivial algebraic expression. It's very easy to solve. Right? Okay. So this is regarding the dn. And if somebody tries with plus lambda by 2, they are going to end up with 2n minus 1. Then what you have to do is, you should take n equal to 1, but n not equal to 0. Right? Only the n will vary. Apart from that, the expression. First line, repeat again. Which first line, Amma? Bhanu Shamita, which first line? Are you talking about this? 2t minus lambda by 2 is equal to n lambda. Is this what you want? 2t minus lambda by 2. This is the path difference created. Did you get this expression? In the previous slide, I have showed. 2t plus or minus lambda by 2. This was the path difference created between the light rays, that is B and C. So two light rays are coming here. Na? The path difference created between these two rays is actually 2 mu t cos r plus or minus lambda by 2. And after substituting mu equal to 1 and r equal to 0, I got this path difference as 2t plus or minus lambda by 2. Here I said you have the liberty to choose plus lambda by 2 or minus lambda by 2. Both will work. I chose minus lambda by 2, right? So 2t minus lambda by 2 was the path difference, right? So if this path difference is equivalent to integral multiple of lambda, you get maximas and bright fringes, which is the first interference condition I have mentioned in the previous classes. In order to get the constructive interference, it must be integral multiple of full wavelengths, right? This is for bright ring. And similarly for dark ring, you have to replace it with half lambdas, odd multiples of half lambda, that is lambda by 2, 3 lambda by 2, 5 lambda by 2, 7 lambda by 2, etc., which I will do in the next slide. Is this clear? Bhanu Shamita. So this expression is obtained from previous derivation. Now in place of t, in place of small t, as I have already derived, see t I got this na, in the previous slide, t equal to dn square by 8r I have derived from the Pythagoras theorem, right? So this Pythagoras theorem expression I am putting directly in place of TMR. So 2 into dn square by 8r minus lambda by 2 equal to n lambda, and simply by bringing lambda by 2 to the other side and cross multiplying will give you dn square is equal to 2 into 2n plus 1 lambda r, and finally the square root. I hope it is clear to you. Shamita, Susmita, sorry, Susmita. Is it okay? Okay. So with n values taking 0 here, and if you do it with the other way, you will get n equal to 1, 2, 3. I'll make a move to the next slide. This is for dark summa. Once again, I took the same path difference as 2t minus lambda by 2, and now I'm equating it to 2n minus 1 lambda by 2. Well, somebody may once again argue, why are you taking 2n minus 1? Why don't you do it with 2n plus 1? Yes, you can do it, but this is simpler. Why? Because if you expand this right hand side term, it is 2n into lambda by 2, which is just n lambda, and minus lambda by 2, right? So this is minus lambda by 2 and this is minus lambda by 2. Both of them will get cancelled. So my expression will be simpler. Otherwise, if I take plus lambda by 2, I have to take this one to the other side and I am going to get another extra lambda. Even then I have to omit this lambda. As I said, in path difference, if you get any additive lambda term, plus lambda, 2 lambda, 3 lambda, you can simply omit. It is not going to make any contribution. Whereas if it is lambda by 2, you have to carry that expression, right? Lambda by 2s are dangerous. You have to carry them. Whereas lambdas, after all, when you equate it for maxima or minima, the answer is not going to be different. What I mean is, if I add a lambda on the left hand side, and if I say right hand side n lambda for maxima, so if you pull the lambda to the other side, it becomes n minus 1 lambda. After all, n is an arbitrary integer, na? N I have decided. You can take m, you can take p, any number, right? Integer multiples of lambda is not going to make any difference. That's why no matter whether you take minus lambda by 2 or plus lambda by 2, you will end up with the expression. Let me put it here. 2 into t, t is dn square by 8 r, lambda by 2 gone, we are left with n lambda. Or you cancel this 2 and 8, it becomes 4r. So this goes to the other side as a dn square is equal to 4n lambda r. I repeat, dn square is equal to 4n lambda r, or dn, diameter of dark ring, nth dark ring, is going to be square root of 4n lambda r. Square root of 4n lambda r, right? So this is regarding the dark fringe, and here my n is starting with n equal to 0, etc. Of course, 0th order fringe we may not be able to see. We will be taking n equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. Right? Even if you have 0, it has no physical significance here. Right? We'll be taking n equal to 1 only. Now coming to the next slide, and one more thing I want to mention here, Amma. Generally, in any experiment, in any real calculation, we depend only on the dark rings, but not on the bright rings. If you come to the lab, we'll do the experiment only with dark rings, but not with bright rings. The reason is, it is very easy to identify the boundary of a dark fringe, whereas it is not possible to find out the brightest point of a bright ring. So in any experiment, the significance is given only to dark rings. So most of the expressions are involved with the dark ring, but not with the bright ring. I'm not saying you discard the bright ring. You may get the problems in the exam, but most of the derivations here are done only with the dark ring, right? So I'll make a move to the next slide. There are two applications of this Newton's ring summa. Two applications. One is determination of wavelength lambda of a monochromatic source. Another one is refractive index of a transparent liquid with the same setup. Two applications are there. The first one. So how do you determine the wavelength of sodium vapor lamp? Here it need not be sodium vapor lamp always, but in the laboratory we are using a yellow color sodium vapor lamp. That's why I have given sodium vapor lamp. For that matter, you can use any monochromatic source. Any monochromatic source. Monochromatic. Please try to understand. Mono means single, chrome means color. So single color. So single color is a layman language. In science, we say single wavelength. So lambda is constant, right? Lambda is not wide. Lambda is a single wavelength, right? So if you have a source with constant wavelength, single wavelength, not multiple wavelengths, then you say that it is a monochromatic source. So using Newton's rings, you can measure the wavelength of monochromatic source. How? You please take the expression for dark fringe. Just now I said dark rings are important as far as any experiment is concerned. So I am going to take the diameter of nth dark ring. Nth dark rings expression we have derived in the previous slide as dn square is equal to 4n lambda r. See, I am not taking the square root amma because it is convenient to deal with dn square rather than dealing with dn, right? So for dark ring, this condition is okay. Now I'll simply change the value of n. So instead of taking n, I'll say mth order ring or mth ring. It is something like your roll number, amma. First roll number, seventh roll number, 10th roll number. You will have some roll number. Na? Just like that, these rings are also given certain roll numbers. Roll number 0 ring, roll number first ring, roll number second ring, third ring, etc. So I have taken an arbitrary nth roll number ring. This is the expression. And now I am taking an mth roll number ring, m, instead of n, I am taking mth one. Just by replacing m everywhere in this expression, we get that. That is dm square is equal to 4m lambda r, right? So what I will do is, now dm square and dn square both are there. I'll subtract one from the other amount. So what do I get? Just dm square minus dn square is equal to, on the right hand side, you have 4m lambda r and 4n lambda r, which are subtracting one from the other, right? So dm square minus dn square, the difference is 4m lambda r minus 4n lambda r, out of which on the right hand side 4 lambda r is common. 4 lambda r is common. So what you can do is simply you can take the lambda outside and pull the rest to the denominator. That is lambda is equal to dm square minus dn square divided by 4r m minus n. So this is the way to determine the wavelength of monochromatic source using Newton's rings experiment. Here dm and dn are the diameters. Dm square is diameter square, dn square is diameter square, but basically dm and dn are the diameters of dark rings. I repeat, dm and dn in this expression are the diameters of dark rings, but not bright rings. Remember, this expression is strictly valid for dark rings, but not for bright ring. Okay, so using this experiment in the laboratory, you will be determining either lambda or r. I mean, if lambda is given to you, you can measure the r. If r is given to you, you can measure lambda. Anything is possible in this laboratory. Okay. Now, after determining the Newton's rings, wavelength of monochromatic source using Newton's rings, let's come back to the second application. The second application is, after completing the second application, I'll conclude here. The second application is determination of refractive index of thin film. Uh, Let us suppose that instead of air, as I said, we have air gap in between the plano-convex lens and the plane glass plate. If you have a plane glass plate and a plano-convex lens, in between you have a plano-concave shaped air film. Now what you do is just take the plane glass plate and pour few drops of water and form a water layer, and then carefully mount the lens on that. I repeat, take a plain glass plate, pour few drops of water and then put the lens on it, right? Then the air gap will be filled with water. For that matter, not only water, you can take any transparent liquid. You can use kerosene, petrol, benzene, toluene, any organic liquid, any transparent liquid, right? So if you want to measure the refractive index of any particular liquid which is transparent, then you can introduce that particular liquid in between the plano-convex lens and the glass plate. Then we can derive the expression. Okay, as I mentioned, everywhere we'll be using only the dark ring formula, right? So I'm using a dash here, dn dash. Instead of using dn, I'm using a dn dash. So the dn dash is going to be 4n lambda r under root divided by this mu. You may ask how come suddenly this mu appeared here? See, generally dn square is equal to 4n lambda r with air medium. With air medium. Please go back to the previous slides. There you can easily understand this. Look at this one, 2 mu t cos r. We intentionally took mu equal to 1. That's why the T is coming as T, but not as mu T. Right? I repeat, the thickness T is coming as mu T here, but we have transformed the mu to 1. And this T we have written as dn. Please try to understand in the next slide. This T we have written as dn square amma. So wherever you get dn square, it is accompanied with a mu. So wherever you get dn square, you should write it as mu dn square. Mu outside multiplied by dn square amma. Please remember that. Mu dn square. Okay. Now, if I want to write this expression, it is mu dn square. As I have taken the square root, I should write it as square root mu into dn. Square root mu into dn. Dn is outside of the square root, right? That square root I am bringing into the denominator, right? So that's why I have taken this dn here as dn is equal to square root 4n lambda r divided by mu. Mu is there, right? Please pay attention here. So the diameter of nth darkening with liquid medium of index mu will be square root of 4n lambda r divided by mu. Okay. Similarly, with the same logic, for mth darkening with the same liquid as medium, it is going to be dm dash is equal to square root of 4m lambda r by mu. So keep these two equations aside, right? So I have taken the plain glass plate, I have applied water, and then I have mounted the plano convex lens. That is the first case. So I got two diameters here. Now I'll do the same setup without water, without liquid. Not only water, any liquid, right? So just I remove the liquid and once again put the same lens, same glass plate and perform the same experiment. So I'll show in the next slide. So if you do the same experiment with liquid as medium, you get this first set of equations, and sorry, you get this second set of equations, that is the dn dash and dm dash. So if you do the experiment with the liquid, you are going to get the second set, and if you do the experiment without liquid with air as medium, you are going to get this expression somehow. So the first set of equations dn and dm are with air, dn dash and dm dash are with liquid, right? Now what we do is, as usual, we just square both the terms and subtract one from the other. That is dn square minus dm square, or dm square minus dn square for this. And similarly, dm dash square minus dn dash square. You can see this. Combining these two expressions will give, as I mentioned, 4r lambda into m minus n. This is coming from the top set of equations, and 4r lambda m minus 1 into m minus n into mu is coming from the second lower set of equations, right? Then dm dash square minus dn dash square is this, dm square minus dn square is this. Just divide both equations, this and this. If you divide with each other, what are you going to left is the last line. That is mu is equal to, this mu is equal to dm dash square minus dn dash square divided by dm square minus dn square. That is, you perform the experiment and find out mth and nth order darkening diameters with liquid, and remove the liquid, perform the same experiment for dm and dn diameters of the same darkenings without liquid or with air medium. Then this ratio is going to give you the refractive index of transparent liquid medium, right? With this, interference is over, Amma. This is the last article of interference. I have next slide. Actually, the first unit wave optics comprises of three parts, Amma. Three parts. First one is interference of light, which I have completed just now. Second one is diffraction of light, and third one is polarization. So if I can complete diffraction and polarization, then our first unit will be over out of 5 units. Okay, we have covered 1/3 of the first unit, Amma, 1/3 portion of the first unit. And after this slide, I want to ask you a simple question. I want to get the answer in the chat. What is the value of this? Are there anybody sleeping? Amma levanamma, నిద్రపోతున్నారమ్మా. Sirisha Vanamali 10, Meghana Reddy 10, Supraja 10. 10, 10. Oh, great, great, great. 0, Chandni. Amma. Yeah, Srilasya. It's a quite different answer. Okay. Yes, Srilasya, you're right. Dedipya, you're right. Pallavi, you're also right. Amma, Pallavi, it's a 10 power 20, Amma, not 10 power 2. You have maybe typing mistake. Somebody said, okay, please pay attention here. Many times you make a mistake like this. 10 power 21 and 10 power 20, you think that the subtraction gives you 10. The answer is wrong, Amma. Some of you have already mentioned the correct answer. Why I gave you this example is, I said several times, lambda or lambda multiples, not half multiples, can be neglected. You know, visible light, the light which we are watching, has a frequency of 10 power 14 hertz, 10 power 14, right? Out of 10 power 14 waves, if you kidnap one wave, what I mean is 10 power 14 minus 1. What is the answer? 10 power 14 minus 1. What will be your answer? Is it not roughly 10 power 14? Is it as good as pickpocketing Ambani's pocket and just grab 1 rupee? అంబానీ గారి దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి ఆయన జేబులోంచి రూపాయి కొట్టేస్తే ఆయనకి ఎంత ఆస్తి నష్టపోతాడో ఇప్పుడు నేను చెప్పింది కూడా అంతే. నాట్ జస్ట్ దట్, ఈవెన్ 10 power 21 and 10 power 20 subtraction is still 10 power 20 order, not 10. There is a lot of difference between 10 and 10 power 20. Please try to understand. That's why I could directly say that wherever you get lambda, 2 lambda, 3 lambda, whether you add or subtract, these expressions for maxima and minima are not going to change, right? So within 1 second of time, there are about 10 power 14 light waves which are hitting our retina. So no matter whether you lose 1 wave or 10 wave or even for that matter 10 lakh waves, the answer is not going to be different, because from 10 power 14, even if you subtract 10 power 13, still the number is very big, right? Only for that reason I gave you this example. So with this, I conclude the interference of light part of unit 1, and in the next class I'll proceed to the diffraction of light, which is the second wave property. I have extended my class by about 9 minutes. If you have any questions to ask, you can ask. I'll wait here. Maybe Somi, no. Any others? No. Sai Kirtana. Okay. Nandini, thank you. Sai, everything is clear. Okay. Thank you. So we'll conclude the session here, Amma. So I don't know about the tomorrow's timetable. If at all we have a class, we'll meet there in the same class. Thank you all. I'll quit here.